They thought they were punishing you. That's why they pulled away. That's why they stopped talking. That's why they became so cold. That's why they ignored your messages. That's why they withheld affection. That's why they acted like you no longer mattered. Because they genuinely believed that if they made you uncomfortable long enough, you would become the version of yourself that they wanted. They thought pain would make you obedient. They thought that the rejection would make you grateful. They thought that distance would make you desperate. They thought silence would make you compliant. And if you've ever been with someone who used love as leverage, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because some people don't communicate, they punish. They don't solve problems, they create them. They don't say, let's work through this. Instead, they say, I'm going to make you feel what it's like to lose me. They think that's power, but it isn't. It's manipulation. You see, real love doesn't need punishment to survive. Real respect doesn't need fear to exist. Healthy relationships don't require one person to constantly prove that they're worthy of being loved. Think about how exhausting that is. Imagine waking up every day wondering which version of someone you're going to get. The loving version or the distant version? The cold version? Or the version that acts like everything is fine. Or the version that disappears because you didn't do exactly what they wanted. That's not peace. That's emotional instability. And the human brain doesn't thrive in instability. It survives in it. You see, when someone constantly changes the rules, you begin spending all your energy trying to predict them, trying to keep them happy, trying not to upset them, trying to avoid another punishment. That's not love. That's emotional conditioning. And that's exactly what they were counting on. Because every time you apologized just to restore peace, they felt more powerful. Every time you chased them, their ego grew. Every time you abandoned your own needs just to keep the relationship together, they believed the strategy was working. They thought they were teaching you a lesson. But here's what they never realized. While they were trying to teach you how to fear losing them, life was teaching you how to stop losing yourself. And that's the lesson they never saw coming. Because pain has a funny way of revealing the truth. The very behavior they used to control you became the behavior that opened your eyes. At first you thought, what did I do wrong? Then you started asking, why does someone who says they love me need to punish me? That's a completely different question. One question blames yourself. The other question examines the relationship. And the moment you start examining the relationship, the control begins to weaken. Because manipulation depends on one thing: your willingness to believe that you're always the problem. The moment you stop automatically accepting blame, you start seeing patterns. You realize this wasn't the first time. It wasn't the second time. It wasn't even the third time. This had become a cycle. Everything was fine until you had a boundary. Everything was fine until you disagreed. Everything was fine until you said no. Everything was fine until you started valuing yourself. And that's when the punishment started. Not because you became difficult, because you became harder to control. And those are two very different things. You see, people who benefit from your lack of boundaries often become uncomfortable the moment you begin setting them. And it's not because boundaries are wrong, but because boundaries expose unhealthy expectations. That's why someone who respects you will adjust. Someone who wants to control you will retaliate. One response is built on love. The other is built on power. And eventually you have to ask yourself a question. Do I want a relationship or do I want permission? Because if you constantly need permission to have feelings, permission to have needs, permission to have opinions, permission to have boundaries, you're no longer living as an equal. You're living as someone trying to earn the right to exist comfortably. No one should have to earn basic human respect. That's where your transformation begins. Not when they changed, when you did. Because one day you stopped asking, how do I get them back? And you started asking, what kind of relationship requires punishment in order to function? That question changes everything. Because now you're no longer chasing their approval. You're evaluating their character. And that's what personal growth does. It changes the questions you ask. Instead of asking, why don't they love me enough? You ask, why have I accepted less than I deserve for so long? That's a painful question, but it's also a freeing one. Because healing doesn't always begin when someone apologizes. Sometimes healing begins the moment you stop waiting for one. And there's a quote by Maya Angelou that has always stayed with me. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't wait a second, a third, or a fourth. No, the first time they show you themselves, the first time the mask slips, the first time they show that manipulation, Believe them. And whether you understand that spiritually, psychologically, philosophically, or even simply through your own life experience, the principle remains the same. Patterns reveal more than promises. Actions reveal more than words. Consistency reveals more than chemistry. That's why I do what I do. I help people reinterpret their past so that they can reclaim their future. Because maybe they weren't punishing you. Maybe they were revealing themselves. Maybe every silent treatment, every withdrawal, every manipulation tactic, every attempt to control you was showing you exactly what kind of relationship you were in. And maybe that's the lesson that changed your life. It's not because they intended to teach it either, but because you finally chose to learn it. And that's one of the reasons I wrote Phoenix from Stability to Power. Because real power isn't making someone regret losing you. Real power is reaching a place where you no longer need to sacrifice your peace just to keep someone else comfortable. They thought they were punishing you. They expected you to become smaller, more agreeable, more afraid, more dependent. But they never expected their punishment to become the very thing that taught you your worth. You see, the real victory wasn't proving them wrong. The real victory was becoming someone who no longer needs fear to keep a relationship together and no longer accepts relationships built on fear. Peace, blessings, love, and power.